So when I first thought about it, I thought buying a pre-con for my first property was the only way that I could get in, was the only attainable thing that I could buy. I didn't have enough money to really buy a house, although thinking back, I should have. And I'll probably say that 10 times through this, but pre-con was easy. I had the money for the down payment, but obviously not enough for a full mortgage at the beginning. So it seemed like the easy way to get in, and I didn't need a house. At that time I was like in my early 20s and wanted to live at Yonge and Eglinton. So I knew I wanted that area. I wanted that Yonge and Eglinton area. It was up and coming. I bought in the Minto, 2191 Yonge Street, which at the time was one of the first big buildings to be built at Yonge and Egg. So I knew I wanted to be there. I loved the building. And when I bought pre-construction, I didn't even get in like round one or ground floor. I think by the time I bought, they were probably on like the second or third phase of releases. The building's like 50 stories high or something. I don't even remember how many units there are. But they were probably in their second or third phase of releases. And Minto is a good builder, reputable builder, so I was comfortable buying from them and thought it was a good investment. I'll be honest, I think I was scared shitless to buy it. So I think it seemed like a ton of money for me. I think when I bought that, what did I pay? I think I paid like $229. In the mid 200s I paid for that. It was a 1-bedroom, 640 square foot unit on the 23rd floor facing west, looking at the Canadian Tire building across the street. I thought that was a ton of money and couldn't believe that I was doing it. But knew that I had to, and thank God that I did, because if I didn't do it then, I don't know where I'd be now. Well, so I bought that, and I think I got occupancy probably like a year and a half later. It was great. The building was great. They registered the building like a month after I got occupancy. So like good on them. They were on top of their game there. I lived there for almost 2 years. And then sold it. What did we sell it for? Either 360 or 460, I feel like. Couldn't have been 460, so probably 360, maybe just under 400. So in 2 years, $150,000 or so it appreciated. Well, maybe 3 years, because from the time I bought it to when I sold it. And that time I lived there, I got married and had no intention of buying a house. Then my wife wanted to buy a house. We got back from our honeymoon. We got married in August, came back from our honeymoon in September, and bought the house in October. And I don't even think we looked at houses. We looked at one house. I think I looked at one house, and it was the house that we bought. And funny enough, at that time, which was, I guess, 2006, we were in competition. There were multiple offers then as well. For the house, $507,000. For a 3-bedroom bungalow on a 40 by 130 foot lot. Remember a minute ago when I told you how scared I was to buy that condo? This was amplified exponentially on how scared I was to buy that. But I knew that, again, I knew it was the right investment. I knew that buying this was gonna benefit me. I never really thought about, I don't think, how high the value would go or where it would go, because I wasn't looking at it from the sole investment point of view. But I just needed, I guess we wanted to buy a house and we wanted to move. So it was a good house. We liked the area. The location was kind of in between my family and her family, and it was good. We knew that the area was up and coming, knew some people that were moving into the area, and thought if we're going to have kids and a family, it was a good place to do it. I'm sure it didn't feel good. I don't remember exactly the feeling, but it couldn't have felt, it was nerve-wracking. I mean, look, it was nerve-wracking to the idea of me buying it to begin with, let alone having to compete and possibly pay more. But it wasn't as crazy as we're seeing some stuff these days. I think there was like 2 or 3 offers on it. So we got it for, I don't even remember. I guess it was listed maybe for $499 or something like that. And we got it for $507. So when we bought it, we had an agent. I wasn't an agent at the time. So our agent worked it really well for us. He basically had us prepped and ready to go, knowing what the expectations needed to be, what our expectations should have been in terms of value and process and I mean, we had everything lined up pretty much ready to go. So nothing came, I don't think, really as a shocker. We had like renovations that we wanted to do, which we budgeted for and based on how much we were spending. And it all kind of worked out. I lived in that house for almost 10 years. So when we bought it, it was old. There hadn't been really any updates to it. So when we bought it, we redid the entire kitchen. We redid the floors in the house. We sanded and stained the floors. We didn't replace them. And that was what we did originally, and we painted. About a year or two later, we redid the bathroom. About a year after we moved there, we had a massive flood in the basement. So we ripped out the entire basement. I left it unfinished for a while because we didn't need it. It was the two of us and we were using it as storage. And then probably a couple years after that, I finished the basement. So we did that, lived there, had 2 kids, did some other updates and stuff throughout, but nothing really major. Lived there till 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we knew we wanted to move, or we wanted a bigger house. We didn't necessarily need to move. We liked the house. It was on a busier street, but it was okay. But we said we wanted a bigger house. So we knew that, kind of topping up the bungalow we were in was an option that we were talking about a lot. And we spoke to builders and we looked at our options and stuff. And when it came down to it, we looked at it and said, the bungalow we have here has been updated, has been renovated. And I think that there's more value in the bungalow as the bungalow it is than just the land for us to take and rip apart and top up. So at that point, by then I was an agent now for 5 or 6 years. So I had my eye out, had looking around at what was going on. And at some point found a lot that I loved. We looked at a couple things. I offered on a couple things. We didn't get it. And then we found a lot that we loved. That had been sitting on the market for a while. It actually had a fire in the house previously. So the house was gutted. It was basically like stud walls and just sitting there. So it was perfect. It was a little bit of a bigger bungalow than I was in. So it gave us good ability to go up and get a good sized house without adding on or spending more money. And I looked at it and said, to make that move and buy that, I can sell my house, I think I put like $150,000 in the bank from selling that, versus what I bought the next house for, which went towards building, and then went and built on the other one. So it was a back and forth conversation a bit on whether the value was to build on our current house or buy something else. But because we could buy for less than we sold for, it made sense for us to do it somewhere else. And then we got on a better lot on a better street. So we had a condition on the house that was expiring, and my current house wasn't sold. And I remember standing the day that the condition expired with the waiver in my hand and my pen in my hand going, am I doing this or am I not doing it? Should we do it or should we not do it? And I went back and forth 10 times. And then finally just said, I know that we need to do this and it's the right move. And I just did it. Not really knowing what was happening, but knowing what was happening. Like I knew that we were going to be fine, but I sat there talking it over and really trying to figure out with my agent if it was the best move. And like I said, knew that it was the way to go. All right. So once I went forward with that, first we continued selling our house. I remember we finally sold our house. I was in Mexico on holidays when we finally got that house sold. So it was nice to come home and have that done. But we were on the market with our current house. We cleaned it up a little bit and got through that showings. We dealt with, I had 2 kids at the time, but made it as accessible as we could for people to come in and see it. Bought the other house, and then I had to start working because I had to find a place for us to live. I had to find a way to close on the new house. And then I had to find a builder and then get financing in order to build. So we went one step at a time. I found a rental. Somebody I knew, a client whose house we had sold. The house was up for rent, the main floor. So we rented that. Funny enough, was 2 doors down from the new house that we bought. So it made it really convenient because we could watch everything going on. Builders wise, I had a couple builders that I was speaking to that I knew through the network, people that I wanted to speak to. And, ultimately we settled on the builder that we used, which was Rado General Construction, General Contracting. We had a great relationship with him and, decided to move forward. We had a plan for that. So we had a budget worked out, we had a timeline worked out, and we had the rental worked out for that. So that was great. We started working on designs and stuff for that house. And again, I had an idea of what we wanted, so it made that a little bit easier. And then I needed to have our house sold in order to get financing on the new house. Because the new house was, like I said, had a fire in it, so it wasn't finished. It was a little bit trickier because some banks are a little bit tighter on lending on vacant houses or unlivable houses or vacant lots. So I had to work out a way to finance that. So we had to put more down. I had to put 50% down on that house in order to get the mortgage for the balance, which obviously came from the proceeds from the house that we sold. So we did that. I arranged financing for the construction of the house and everything. And then I remember we moved into our rental on February 1st, I think it was. March 1st, our house closed. And March 2nd, they started construction in the house, or demolition in the house. From there, things just went. I mean, with our builder and our plan, we had a 6-month construction timeline. So by the end of September, we were anticipating to be in, and they went to it. Like I said, we were renting 2 doors down, so I was able to watch every day what was going on, and it was a scary feeling to get involved in that. And I remember the weeks leading up to starting construction and moving and closing and all of these moving parts, I wasn't sleeping. I was stressed. I was nervous. I was scared. I was everything that you would think that you were. And then it hit me one night. I was lying in bed and it just hit me that I'm in it. I'm doing it. I've committed to doing this. So not sleeping and worrying about paying for it and the cost and all of this at this point was irrelevant because there's no turning back now. And I know, in talking to our agent, one of the things that he said is, you're doing it, so do it. And if you move into the house and 6 months later or a year later, you can't afford to live there, you sell it. That's it. And I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I'm deep into this and overanalyzing and spinning into my head 32 different ways. But that was it. That was my biggest fear is, well, what happens if we move to this house? The mortgage I have is going to be way bigger than the mortgage I had on my previous house. The house is going to be bigger, so it's going to cost me more and this and this and this and this. How am I going to do this? So I just kind of got it through my head. You're in it, so just do it. Enjoy the process and don't get caught up in the little stuff. You're spending the money. So just enjoy spending the money because you got no choice now. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, you can sell it and buy a different house. And I bought into that and kind of went with it and enjoyed the process. It was an enjoyable process. We had a smooth process. We didn't have many major issues or anything like that. We had a couple tweaks and changes through the way, but we enjoyed the process. It was a fun process to watch every day changes coming to the house. So I had some things in particular that I wanted in the house. We had some main floor tweaks and changes we had to do. Like we had initially in our plan, we had a walk-in pantry, but I was very particular on having an eat-in kitchen. And if we had the pantry, it would take away the space from the kitchen. So we chose to get rid of that pantry and put the eat-in kitchen, which in hindsight was a great idea because we have more pantry space on the wall and now we have a great eat-in area. But the other thing that I was 100% sold or stuck on was I had to have a separate rental suite in the basement. So I said, in my bungalow previously, I never wanted a tenant in the basement. It was nothing, never even a consideration. Here I said, if we're doing this move, we've got to put a tenant in the basement because I wanted that income to obviously help pay for the higher mortgage that we had. And so we worked through that with our builder. We actually built a completely separate suite. So even today, there's no access from our half of the basement into the rental half of the basement. It's a completely separate wall. We put in a new staircase in there. We had to get a permit to put the new staircase in. It's completely separate. We had tenants, once the house was done, we had tenants move in. I think actually they might have even moved into the house before we did. Because they were a student who moved here from out of town to go to school and they needed to get in. So they were in. We had tenants in there for almost 2 years, the same tenant. They were amazing. You know, all of my worries about tenants in the basement and this and that, it was great. It was well worth the investment and the idea of having the people in the basement. They moved out halfway through COVID. They finished school, so they moved out. And then we had a decision on what are we going to do with this basement? Do we want to rent it out or not? Interestingly enough, around the same time, my wife had started her own business, and we figured out that that was going to be an amazing space. Instead of her looking to rent an external space somewhere and pay to rent that, we've got this space here. It works for her business. We can repurpose this and have her move her business into that space. So she's taken over that rental space and covered some of that rental income. And then actually now what we're doing with the other half of it is we're going to turn the other half into a podcast studio and a social media studio in there so that we can do more videos and stuff like this and have a great setup for it. So it's a clean and quiet place, and it makes, it brings our social media game up a little bit. But that was one thing that I was 100% stuck on because I wanted that extra income to help subsidize the cost of the new house while I was uncertain and unsure and worried about it. So I'm glad that my wife said to me right after we got married, we need to buy a house, because I had no thought of buying a house at the time. I was happy in the condo. I loved living in a condo. It was easy, fun living. We lived on top of the keg. We'd go to the keg for dinner. I'd walk out to Yonge Street. It was amazing. But if we hadn't bought that house when we did, I don't know if we would have been able to get into a house a year or two later, because the prices continued to go up. So that's the first thing, is that, I could go back and say buying the condo when I did was smart. And I say to people now all the time, and I think about it for my kids who are 8 and 5, when they're 20 something and they want to move out, what are they going to buy? Where are they going to go? So I talk and think a lot about, buying pre-construction condos and investment stuff like that I can set them up with, so that when they get to that age, they have an option, or at least they have their foot in the game already that we can help use to subsidize where they want to go. So the only other regret that I would say I have real estate wise is that when I bought that house, I should have bought the next door neighbor too, or 2 neighbors. It was, looking back, I thought I was paying over $500,000 for this house, and it was a crazy amount of money. Now look at the prices. Now that I'm in and I'm settled and everything is rolling, it's not a concern anymore. It's a much more comfortable feeling. And again, although it was stressful and nerve-wracking at the time, I had good people helping me and guiding me. And thank God that they were there and that I did, because again, now that we're there, I don't regret it for a second. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, listening to my story. If you have any questions or you're stuck at any one of those stages or points, get in touch with me, shoot me a DM, give me a call. I'm happy to talk through it and see what ideas or suggestions or options might be best for you. And if you have any real estate questions at all, reach out. Talk to you later.